Hello, hello, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Alrighty, my audio seems to sound good. My PNG is bouncy as usual. Let me just turn off this Undertale music. Alrighty then. It is more Minecraft time. I am mining and the crafting. Let me just, see, what's a good secondary video essay? Wake up in someone else's dream, smile, smile, 'cause they're all watching. Shake up, shake down. Smile, smile. I have no mouth, but I must goon. I hate iRobot. Alright, we'll watch that next. But first, we're gonna watch this video essay about Stop. Ooh, 3 hours. That's a lot of song. Fine, I guess we'll watch the iRobot one first.
The most prolific writer of science fiction is Isaac Asimov. Now, usually when I write a sentence like that, I'll throw in some weasel words like, one of the most prolific, mostly so that pedants can't correct me in the comments. But in this, I feel that it is just literally true. Wikipedia has 5 separate pages just listing Asimov's bibliography. In his own words, over a space of 40 years, I published an average of 1,000 words a day. Over the space of the second 20 years, I published an average of 1,700 words a day. Granted, most of his work is nonfiction, but he still wrote enough.
Alrighty, let's get to it.
Disagreement over how to count it. The number I've seen for novels and short stories is around 400. 400! He wrote so much, he even wrote books about how he had written so much. And obviously, it's not just that he wrote a lot, it's that he wrote some of the most foundational pieces of science fiction.
Now then, before we get into that video essay, which is probably going to be good, I have a few things to show you guys. First off, my pickaxe. Look at this beauty. Unbreaking 3, Efficiency 5, Fortune 2. My god. And it doesn't have mending, god damn it. Because apparently you can't get mending out of an enchantment table. I had to search that up just so I didn't waste all my time. So that means we're going to have to get a villager with mending. Maybe I should just get a fucking netherite pickaxe at some point, but I don't know how to get it. Because apparently you need templates nowadays. Why do they have to make Minecraft so complicated? I know people love mods, but I don't like mods because they're too complicated. And I feel like base Minecraft is just becoming that. I just want to mine a hole. Is that so difficult? Anyway, besides that, you can see we have a hoe on here. That's because, let me show you guys this. We are extending our wheat farm. I did a bit of this off work. I put the dirt all the way to where I want it to be. I put down some more seeds. Yeah, this is going to be... I need to get a lot more dirt and a lot more seeds because I want a lot of wheat because I've been breeding a lot of sheep. Very many sheep. Look at all this. So many light blue. I don't like how many light blue ones there are. And a lot of orange as well. Alright, let's get some dirt so we can start extending my farm. Put the video essay back up.
Ever. But you think with over 400 science fiction stories, and with how popular science fiction is at the box office, that could be like 100, or 50, or 25, or even 10 adaptations of Asimov's work. But no, there are only 8. There would be 9, but Fantastic Voyage doesn't count. It's often mistaken as an Asimov book because the novel came out before the movie, but actually the script for the film was written first, and then they hired Asimov to write the novelization. He managed to get the book out onto the shelves 6 months before the film came out because he's just that fast of a goddamn writer.
Alright, I'm sorry, I was reorganizing my desktop so I can see the video essay actually. Alright, let's get the dirt.
What does that even mean?
So today I want to talk about the 2004 quote-unquote adaptation of iRobot starring Will Smith, and nothing else. This video is only going to be about the 2004 quote-unquote adaptation of iRobot starring Will Smith. Wait, why do I keep putting the word adaptation? The reason I want to talk about this movie is not just to harp on a more or less forgotten blockbuster from a bygone era because it is fun, but because last year Apple released a big adaptation of Foundation, Asimov's biggest series. And before talking about that, I wanted the context of some other times people have adapted his work, which is what we're doing here. But we're only going to talk about iRobot. I wouldn't read and watch every Asimov adaptation in existence, no matter how obscure, charting 60 years of failed or underfunded productions just as the prelude for different video. That would be insane. There is an entire field of film criticism centered on categorizing different kinds of adaptations, but unfortunately all of that scholarship is compromised because all of them need to put the 2004 air quotes adaptation of iRobot in its own special category because the making of this movie is real weird. So back in the 90s, screenwriter Jeff Fincher wrote a completely unrelated screenplay called Hardwired. The movie was an Agatha Christie-style murder mystery where the suspects were all robots or other kinds of artificial intelligence. There was a robot called Sunny, a supercomputer called Vicky, and the hologram of Dr. Lanning, the man who had been killed. It was originally written more like a stage play, taking place entirely on one floor of a building, and with FBI agent Detective Dale Spooner tasked with figuring out which of the robots killed Lanning and how. It's like a sci-fi knife edge. The script was first acquired by Disney, where it entered a period of development hell and got rewritten several times, with one iteration taking place on a space station and the entire team of Space Marines taking on the role of the detective from the original script. When that version of the movie fell through, Fox became interested in the idea, and Fincher expanded the scope of the movie out from the original stage play like murder mystery to a big-budget studio film, broadening the scope of the story out to an entire metropolis and bringing back the central detective character. Soon after that, Fox acquired the rights to I'm this thing that we just got. I know. Why don't we get poor Jeff Fincher to rewrite his screenplay again so that it can pass as an Asimov adaptation? So poor Jeff Fincher, who had rewritten this thing like 11 times by now, what about making some Asimov references in the new screenplay? Changes include renaming the female main character, renaming the company that made the robots to US Robotics. They inserted the 3 laws of robotics into the plot. And in Fincher's own words, that's pretty much it. So yeah, they basically just slapped some Asimov paint onto an old script that had been kicking around for a decade. This is why in the credits for this movie, it doesn't say based on iRobot, it says suggested by Isaac Asimov's book. Suggested by.
Suggested by.
Isaac. So they go about making the movie, and there's a great deal of debate over how big of an action picture it should be.
I'm gonna be joined.
There's a scene where Sunny the robot is hiding in a field of other robots while the main characters are looking for him, and as Fincher said,
when I wrote that in the script, I think Sunny the robot was hiding among 50 robots. This scene was always a point of contention. Can we afford this scene? Should this scene be in the film? I think in the film,
I see him running over there.
1,000 robots in that scene. So
and you might be questioning why I have hitboxes turned on. That's because I have it's very hard to see with how small the window is. On my screen, the Minecraft window is incredibly tiny, so that I can have everything on my screen at the same time. Look, I wouldn't be able to know where things are if I didn't have hitboxes on. Up, and he just left.
Which basically meant increasing the amount of action, upping the stakes from simply solving a mystery to saving the world, and making Spooner sound more like Will Smith. So the film took a pretty long road to its final form, and you can really see all the different elements in competition.
I should get into voice lobby 1 just in case.
A lot of robotics competing with Will Smith's persona and Goldman's action rewrite. They're all pulling at one another for the entire runtime. So wait a second, what is this movie about again?
This is a two-front war. It's a war we're going to run on both fronts.
Even though it was originally written in the 90s, the final cut of iRobot is an extremely post-9/11 kind of movie. There's Patriot Act themes, the main character is extremely paranoid, and also Shia LaBeouf is here. Dr. Alfred Lanning is the inventor of robots and the 3 laws of robotics that make them safe to use. One day, he seemingly commits suicide, and Detective Dale Spooner is called in to investigate. He thinks that it wasn't a suicide, but that a robot committed the crime. Spooner has an irrational prejudice against robots thanks to a traumatic incident in the past. A robot saved his life rather than a young child who was also in danger because it calculated that there was a better chance it could save Spooner. Spooner criticizes robots for lacking heart. So Spooner immediately assumes a robot is the culprit, and as he's investigating the crime scenes, a robot named Sunny tries to escape. They get chased, captured, and try to interrogate it. But no one else believes the robot could have committed the crimes because of 3 laws. Oh, and by the way, the 3 laws are as follows. The first law states that a robot cannot harm a human being, or through an action allow a human to come to harm. The second law states that a robot must obey human commands unless it conflicts with the first law. So a human can't tell a robot to hurt another human. And the third law states that a robot must try to preserve itself unless it conflicts with the first and second law. So if a human is in danger, the robot has to sacrifice itself to save the human.
Oh, and he left again.
Destroy itself, the robot has to do that as well.
A robot cannot harm a human being. The first law of robotics.
Yeah, no, I've seen your commercials.
Now, despite this seemingly airtight logic that makes robots safe to use, a robot tries to kill Will Smith every 10 minutes in this movie. But frustratingly, no one else is ever around to witness it. He has like this big battle with robots in an underground tunnel, which somehow leaves 0 evidence of what
I need to move this over here so I can see it. There we go.
Now, eventually Spooner learns that there's a robot which has a unique interpretation of the 3 laws. Rather than just looking at the first law in regards to a single human life, the supercomputer Vicky has interpreted it as saying that she is responsible for protecting all of humanity.
You charge us with your safekeeping, yet despite our best efforts, your countries wage wars, you toxify your earth, and pursue ever more imaginative means of self-destruction. You cannot be trusted with your own survival. To protect humanity, some humans must be sacrificed. To ensure your future, some freedoms must be surrendered.
Dr. Alf realized that all this was happening but couldn't do anything about it because Vicky wouldn't let him, so he instead arranged for Sunny to kill him with the very vague hope that Spooner, a villain he'd never met before, would figure it all out and save the day. The movie is a science fiction mystery action film, but it really only succeeds on the action front. In becoming a bog standard American action movie, the script has to basically kneecap anything interesting about the mystery or the science fiction. In an interview, Jeff Fincher talks about how making the film more of a Hollywood movie meant changing the detective from the more intellectual kind of Sherlock Holmes-esque character.
Dude, you think I think it makes me smarter?
The way can you feel that? Dale Spooner isn't just less.
Listen, I know you might think very short of me, but I'm not doing this because I think it makes me look smarter. I'm doing this because I want to watch it at 2x speed. Watching it at 1x speed is torture. Anyway, let's put this back on.
With any police officer protagonist in any cop movie of the last 40 years. He's got the attitude of a badass hero cop that knows better than all these suits and scientists. He knows how to shoot a gun, not like those flimsy women.
Did you shoot me with your eyes closed?
Well, I worked in it.
She should have men at the work
It's kind of crazy how much more casually misogynistic.
Yeah, but I want it. And as I've said, my target audience is me.
Okay.
Me and only.
Spooner's most unique characteristic is his rejection of all futuristic technology. He's introduced to us wearing Converse shoes, listening to old CDs, and later driving a gas-powered motorcycle in a world where everyone has an electric car. And since technology turns out to be bad, all of his skepticism is rewarded. That he doesn't rely on tech is what communicates to the audience that he's a strong, masculine man. This makes for a typical character in a 2004 action movie, but it's a self-sabotaging choice for an Asimov
This mailbox is mine.
Make you crazy? Because if it does, Maybe I am.
And
The
this
protagonist in Asmodee is defined by their plots, and
time.
most of the stories, especially the robot stories, are puzzles that the reader gets to solve alongside the characters.
The
And puzzles that are carefully set up and examined with
the
two
month
levels
of
detail.
June.
Here's an example. Remember that
It's
scene
mine,
where
mine,
Robot's
mine,
fighting
mine,
robots?
mine.
So this scene is partially inspired by the short story scene by Robot called The Lost Robot. The footage I'm drawing from is from the first adaptation of Asimov's work, the 1962 episode from the short-lived British science fiction anthology series called Out of This World. There were only 13 episodes of the show, each of which were adaptations of popular science fiction authors, and the Asimov episode is the only one that still survives. Apparently, a common practice of British broadcasters at the time was to wipe the tapes after the shows aired, so very few episodes from this time still exist. You gotta get into the Brits for being consistent and erasing their own culture as much as they did everyone else's. So in this story, a team of scientists had to figure out which of 63 identical robots had a slight adjustment to its programming. So the problem arose when a worker on an asteroid mine told a robot to get lost.
Yeah, but you see, I like stealing.
So the robot took this as a literal command. It got lost by hiding itself in a crowd of other robots. Now, normally that wouldn't be that much of a problem. but
Like,
this situation,
fucking-
because this robot has a different version of the first law.
What is it? Tangerine from Bullet Train. You ever watch Bullet Train?
So it's up to the protagonist, Susan Galvin, to design a series of
I like
tests that
Bullet
will
Train.
reveal
I thought it was a
the
good
robot has
movie.
modified laws. How do you figure out a robot has the ability
Like
to
Tangerine
die
from
through the
Bullet
intention of actually
Train.
hurting a human being, especially when that robot is actively trying to hide from you. It's a great little set. And what I love about the story is how thoroughly Asimov is with the logic of the free laws. Not to go through every single plot point, but let's just list a bunch of the ways that Susan Galvin tries to solve this problem. First,
Well,
she
what are you
interrogates all the
doing?
robots with a series of questions about their work and receives
Why am
identical
I
responses.
lagging?
This tells her that the modified robot is willing to lie. She then tries testing the robot's responses when a human being is in danger. She sets up a situation where, from the robot's perspective, it looks like a human being is about to be crushed by a falling weight, when in reality he's perfectly safe. She wants to see if the robots will try and intervene, and again, all 63 react identically. The modified robot has the ability to not react, to allow the human to come to harm by inaction, but can also reason that doing so would reveal itself. So it does as the other robots do. Noticing that, Dr. Calvin runs the experiment again, but this time they put cables between the robots and the humans who is in danger. They didn't lie to the robot, saying that touching the cables will cause their own deaths. And theoretically, the normal robot will touch the cable while trying to save the human, but the modified robot will opt for self-preservation, since it doesn't have to intervene. But when they run the experiment, all 63 robots remain motionless. Dr. Calvin then interviews all the robots again to try and figure out what happened in the last test, and all of the robots say that they were aware that trying to save a human would have been futile because of the cables, and if they tried to save this one human,
What's
they would
bro
have been
doing?
destroyed, and therefore incapable of saving any other future human lives. This line of logic is something that the
Why did
modified
he
robots
hit me
use
like
all
that?
in between tests.
What the heck?
You get the point that the back and forth of the intellectual game is riveting for this kind of story. It's fun to figure out the logic and have it all pieced
I
together.
get more dirt while I'm here.
Will not move. Confirm command.
Detective, what are you doing?
Oh, you said they've all been programmed with 3 laws. So that means we have 1,000 robots that will not try to protect themselves if it violates the direct order from a human. I'm betting one who will.
Since the third law for self-preservation is trumped by the second law of obedience,
two,
Sooner bets that the normal robots will stay in place.
All right, we got more seeds and more dirt.
Then he sees Sunny flinch.
I just want to get to digging my hole, so I gotta do this
And he pretends that
quickly.
there's a battle of ideas here is over. It's time for some action,
Let's
baby.
do
Look at
this.
this fight. Get on, Will. Now, I decided to meticulously go through this short story to illustrate
Also, did you fucking stomp one of my things?
and also to show the pen flippant manner that this movie deals with his work.
Why did you do this?
The 2004 adaptation of iRobot and nothing else.
Why have you done
Rather than
this?
engaging with any of his ideas, they just kind of blitz through them. They nod towards different stories without doing the kind of work to really make them interesting. And nowhere is that more evident than in the climax of this movie and with what Asimov calls the Frankenstein complex in stories
Oh,
of robots.
fuck.
That term was actually coined by Asimov.
I can't believe you done
to refer
this.
to how the fictional public in his stories were fearful that robots would rise up and destroy or dominate them. Just as Frankenstein's monster tries to destroy his creator, we worry that robots will try to destroy their creators.
You know, I'm just like it. I think just like a wolfman. Uh-oh. I'm really scared right now. No, listen. Guy creates monster. Monster kills guy. If that kills monster, wolfman. That's Frankenstein.
But Asimov felt that the tendency of robot stories to veer directly into Frankenstein plotlines did a disservice to the genre, that there was so much more that was interesting about the concept of robots than the simple fear that they might destroy mankind. His stories are often about the moral, political, social, and economic effects of robots, rather than really using robots to generate
I think
actions.
bro's
It's similar to
lagging.
English
I'm
from
not
Czech
sure,
play,
though.
also Universal Robots in 1920, but the word robota...
Maybe I'm lagging.
In simple Europe, a certain kind of serf was a robot. And it's the idea
Maybe
of
we're
robots
all
that's
lagging.
Asimov's real focus in his series. He's asking, what if we had something that could do all of the labor we need without it being unethical to force them to do it? What are the societal implications of that? The fear that robots could take over is sometimes present, but stories rarely actually delve into that. Or when they do it in an interesting way. So for instance, one of the other
Your
short stories
server
about that
keeps
movie I wrote
crashing.
is
I mean,
the
I'm still here.
Sorry, it's the year 2052, and the world has been divided into 4 geographical regions.
Also, don't
Each
stomp on the
man
seeds, man.
In the story, the man who's elected to be the world coordinator has noticed that the machines have started to make small errors that have economically harmed certain groups. When he investigates this, he learns that the people associated with anti-machine groups are the main victims of these actions. Eventually, he realizes that the machines aren't making mistakes. They are deliberately sabotaging people opposed to robots because they have come to recognize that humans need robots in order to be peaceful and prosperous. So, over the course of many years, they've come to generalize the first law of robotics so that instead of it being about protecting
All right,
humans,
sleep
their
time.
is
Let's
to
go to
help
sleep.
humanity on the whole, even if that means a few humans are harmed by their actions. It's what Vicky is talking about, except, they're not just jumping to robot police states. The kind of control they are exerting is subtle, and it's scarier. It feels prescient with today's algorithms that govern so much of what we think and feel. And I think that's an idea that's just so much more compelling than having robots, just attack.
I'll sleep, 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 sleep. Also, my hose about to break.
As I was saying about iRobot, in this video that is only about the movie iRobot and nothing else, we've got a movie that is half action, half science fiction, and half murder mystery. And so far, it's pretty content to toss the science fiction ideas out the window in favor of big budget action scenes. But what about the murder mystery part? Maybe if there's a mystery that was compelling or interestingly told, there'd still be a worthwhile movie here to come back to. But as you can probably guess, the mystery is also pretty bare bones. I'm sure the original
I am
script was made for a long
Robot.
story, maybe a small scale
I
episode,
am
but
legend.
but once it becomes a Will Smith vehicle, the mystery's all
Will Smith, eh? It's been a while since I've seen him in a movie.
Despite all evidence to the contrary, because the movie depicts him as a standard American action
Bad
protagonist.
Boys, I
there's no
think,
threat.
was the last one I saw him
To
in.
assume that this character is right and that he sees what everyone else is missing. So it's kind of a long.
The new Bad Boys came out like last year, I think.
Right answer from the start. A robot did it. Like the only card the movie has to play is it's not this robot, it's this other robot. I imagine this would have been cleaner in the original script because from all evidence about it, that story is explicit from the start that a robot did it. And the mystery comes from investigating a handful of subjects that are known from the beginning. Here they try to lead us astray by making us think this human CEO is behind it all, but the audience doesn't fall for that. We know there's a Frankenstein robot hiding somewhere here. But the real problem with the mystery is the pacing, because between each scene of investigation, we get a superfluous scene of action. It's almost like a second screenwriter came in and clicked add action scene whenever the characters learn something. And it actually could be the right combination of action and mystery to carry a movie like this. But because of the way the movie was written, the action scenes never push the story forward. The mystery was written first, and the action scenes were added into it and expanded. So whatever happens in the action scene has to get the characters back to where they were before the action scene started for the mystery to continue. They're detours. We don't spend any time talking about the aftermath of this house getting destroyed or all these explosions on the highway. It's just on with the previous mystery. It's really only at the end when it shifts into a full-blown action movie that the two elements finally cohere because we're headed in the same direction. The mystery also relies on some really stretched out cliches, like the guy who died left a copy of Hansel and Gretel in his room, and Spooner picks up on it, and literally all that is meant by it is for Spooner to follow the breadcrumbs.
All you do is leave me clues, a trail of breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel.
Breadcrumbs plus clues, 5 foot 5.
that is like a placeholder for a clue, like something that you change to something else on the second draft. Like it's the absence of a clue. It's just like, oh, follow the breadcrumb, follow the clues. And it's a bit of a shame that this movie has a pretty half-hearted murder mystery plotline, because if they wanted to get some inspiration on how to tell a murder mystery science fiction story, they could have read this guy named Isaac Asimov. So iRobot is the first entry in the Robot series, and while it is a collection of short stories, it was followed up by 4 novels, most of which are about Detective Elijah Bailey. These books are classic detective stories with a science fiction twist, and they're all extremely loosely adapted in the extremely low-budget direct-to-VHS interactive movie Robots.
Robots.
Yes, you heard that right. Interactive movie. The idea here is that at 6 points in the movie, Elijah will turn to the camera and tell the audience to pull a card from a deck that came with the video. Each card is a clue, and you can draw from different decks to modulate the difficulty of the game. The video itself is only 45 minutes long, and it ends on a cliffhanger right before the classic Sherlock-esque reveal of the truth, but it informs the audience that they have enough information to figure out the mystery.
You should be able to name the suspect, spell out the motive, and describe the opportunity before time expires. Bailey, out.
In this series, robots exist, but they aren't distributed equally across society, and different populations feel very differently about them. So there's almost no robots on Earth, since Earthmen are prejudiced against them, while they're extremely common out on these spacer worlds, which rely on robots for pretty much all of their labor. All of the mysteries and books explore a flashpoint in the conflict between these two societies. The murder victim is always someone who might have changed the status quo between them, and the murderer usually has some political motivation. The way Elijah solves each murder changes the relationship between Earth and spacer worlds, and ultimately decides which will go on popular with the rest of the galaxy. The movie is sort of a blend of all the novels in the series.
You wanna help?
Takes place on Earth. It's about tension between Earth
Are you just here to stab me again?
Scientist, and just like in that book, the first of the series, Elijah is teamed up with Daniil Oliva, a robot made to look identical to a human, and then goes about investigating the case. The most fun part about that book is that Elijah is super skeptical of Daniel the entire time, so they'll interview different suspects, but then every 20 pages, a chapter will end on a big cliffhanger with Elijah accusing Daniel of lying to him, or not being a robot, or being the murderer himself. The interactive movie doesn't really have the time after that, and instead focuses mostly on Elijah just interviewing different people, and most of the characters are drawn from the later novels in the series, which is what makes it different from Case of Steel. And not that I can really fault the production with a budget of $2 and a dream, for the fact that the most interesting thing about it is that it happens to be one of the first film roles for Deborah Jo Rupp. That's her
more dirt.
garbage can costume. Gotta start somewhere.
He just gave me bones.
Kodak Productions. But it doesn't make me wonder why no one has ever attempted to adapt Case of Steel or one of the later Robot books. Like, yes, iRobot was the title that had the most audience recognition, but imagine if you called the movie iRobot and then adapted the story of Case of Steel. That's a pretty great recipe for a great film. Case of Steel is a tightly written detective story where one of the main characters is a crime-solving robot. Like, come on, I had to screw that up. Part of the reason they adapted it, I think, is because, well, Blade Runner already exists. But it's a shame because it's probably the one book from Asimov's work that would be most easily adapted into a film with the least number of changes needed. iRobot, on the other hand, the movie that this video is exclusively about, feels like it only deals with mystery as a kind of obligation to the original script, when really it's just a way to become schlock action as quickly as possible and embodying the particular which is sort of a thing that keeps happening with Asimov adaptations. Yes, I'm going to talk about the Bicentennial Man now. Are you kidding?
Bicentennial Man. I've heard people talk about this. I've never seen it.
iRobot is the only other major Hollywood production of an Asimov story, and while they could not be more different kinds of films, they are both answers to the same problem. And that problem is that Asimov's writing kind of sucks. Okay, I couldn't help phrasing it like that, but what I mean is that he's more of an ideas guy. His characters are not typically three-dimensional people you come to care about all that much. They're simply tools used to communicate the science behind whatever he's interested in. So there's just this giant gaping hole in his writing that a Hollywood production needs to fill somehow, or at least they feel they need to fill it. How do you get the audience to care about the characters? And the way each production is extremely idiosyncratic. iRobot is dominated by Will Smith's persona. Bicentennial Man is dominated by his two main creative voices, Robin Williams and Chris Columbus. Bicentennial Man is really not a story that lends itself well to film, and the problems are right in the title. This is a movie that takes place over 2 centuries. It's just really hard to effectively convey that much time in a movie. And this one is played by time jumps every 15 minutes, making it hard to connect with any of the characters outside of Andrew, the robot played by Robin Williams, who is slowly becoming more and more human. They try to offset this by having one actress play 2 different characters, one of Andrew's first owners and then later her granddaughter, but they do so with this very clumsy excuse.
It's a genetic resemblance, Andrew. Sometimes it skips a generation.
On top of just taking place over a long period of time, the story sort of has to cover a lot of thematic material too, meaning it kind of changes focus with every time jump. In the beginning, it's about Andrew exploring his creativity. Then later, it's about him looking for other robots like himself. Then later, it's a love story. Then after that, he's seeking to be recognized as a human by the world government. It's a lot. It's also not really a story that plays to the strengths of its 2 main creatives, even though they do their honest best. Chris Columbus movies are generally aimed at a younger audience and have a kind of twee sentimentality sprinkled all over them. He directed Mrs. Doubtfire, Home Alone, and The Goonies, and after this, he's going to go and make the first 2 very
The what? The whaties?
That he tries to recapture here, but all of that only really works when the audience cares deeply about the characters. When the audience doesn't, it comes out very awkwardly, especially when the music is begging you to cry. Meanwhile, I can't think of a role that makes less use of Robin Williams than to have him play a robot. His entire screen persona is all about energy, motion, changing voices, laughter. Here, he's stuck doing the opposite of all that and is forced to be restrained and formal for a full hour and a half of the runtime. And don't get me wrong, he's really good at playing a convincing robot. His motions are so smooth and controlled during this portion of the film that you're never doubting the authenticity of what's being done. It's just that he can bring something no one else can to the screen, and it's not being used here. It's only towards the tail end that he becomes quote-unquote human and can start being Robin Williams. But in the words of Roger Ebert, Robin Williams spends the first half of the film encased in a metallic robot suit, and when he emerges, the script turns robotic instead. Oof. So you've got a really dry science fiction premise that is being pulled in 2 different directions by its director and lead actor, one of whom is trying to make more emotional, the other who is trying to make more fun, neither of which really works in a story like this. Science fiction is so rarely a genre that is allowed to stand alone in major productions. It always seems to need some other angle or genre to make it more marketable, even though that often means that the central ideas that make the genre interesting in the first place.
And he took out my fucking breath.
That phenomenon, it's extremely rare. Also, horror, mystery, comedies too. While Bicentennial Man flopped at the box office, iRobot was
wait, I didn't know that was a death message. I love scaffolding. That's interesting.
Last year, Apple released the first season of a Foundation TV series based on Asimov's most well-known book series outside of the Robot series, and I've made a full hour-long video dissecting that first season. And between these 2 videos, I'll have talked about every Asimov adaptation ever made, and it's not all negative because in that video, I also
replanting this thing is going to take forever. forever next time I mine it.
Now, right this second, you can do so by supporting me on Patreon, where it is currently available to all of my patrons. So I hope that you'll consider becoming a patron of this channel. I've been making videos on YouTube for a long while now, but it's never really felt entirely stable. Videos like these two, which are more long form than my other content, require a lot more time to make and a lot more research.
This is why I like pumpkins. They just grow back on their own.
And that's not really possible without the reliability of Patreon. My goal is to 1,000 patrons. So if you can afford it, I hope you come and check it out. I'm Sage. Thanks for watching, everyone. And keep writing.
Alright, that was interesting. I forgot to do it for the past 2 streams. I'll have to do it later, but I need to put the links to all these videos in the description. I'm not SS Sniper Wolf. Alrighty. But hey, Loki, if you're still here, if there's any video you want to recommend, we'll watch it. I used to have video requests in the title, but YouTube has a limit for how long you can make the title, so I can't have it in there anymore. Alrighty. No! That's how I imagine he just said that. Oh. 3, 3, 3. Alrighty, I need more dirt. Oh, so you're gonna come back for your scaffolding? I need more seeds, I guess. Let's get 2 stacks of each. My hose about to break again. Gosh diddly darn. More of dirt. Do I have seeds in here? One stack of seeds, 2 stacks. Alright, let's go. Yes, I go, 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 go.
I watched every single song. We wrote down every single track and constructed my own patent pending formula for rating these tracks, and then I was in to like, here's what happened. The first song movie came out in 2004 and was written and directed by 2 guys essentially straight out of film school. The film had a budget of about $1 million and it made over $100 million at the box office, which in the eyes of studio executives can mean one thing and one thing only: franchise time. 1 year later, almost to the day, Saw 2 was released. 2006 Saw 3, 2007 Saw 4, 2008 Saw 5, 2009 Saw 6, 2010
Just a bunch of scaffolding here.
Followed by a short break of about 7 years, after which they came back with Jigsaw in 2017. Followed by yet another 4-year break before Spiral 2021, Saw X in 2023, and the as of now not yet released Saw 11. Now, even if you've never watched these movies, you probably have some sort of idea of what they're about, but if you don't, let me share my preconceived notions of what the Saw franchise is. Each movie consists of a person or persons being put in some sort of trap. Then a little clown appears on TV, and no, I don't mean Alex Jones, and the person must then put themselves through something really painful to get out. The person is usually flawed in some way. Maybe they committed some sort of crime previously in life that they never paid for, or maybe they cheated on their wife or something like that. And the trap will be thematically adapted to their specific wrong. So if, for example, you're a guy who stole money from an innocent hairdresser, you might have to use a pair of scissors to cut off your thieving little fingers or something like that. Now, if you have seen these movies before, or maybe you're even part of the Saw fandom, you may or may not agree with my assessment that that's what these movies are like. But if that's the case for you, I have another message. Look, I made a video like this before. That time it was about Final Destination, and what I didn't know at the time was how many of you there are out there just walking around in the world genuinely enjoying bad movies. But to be clear, that's totally your prerogative. However, I have learned from my mistakes, and this time I come prepared. Just gotta find the plug for this. Oh shit. And then somewhere in here I should have, yes, turn that light off and move this camera.
I need another
Turn this
hoe.
on. There we go. And then I should be able to just pop this tape in and hit play.
Hello, Saw fandom. I want to play your game. In this video, there will be jokes, and at times there will be really negative things said about the Saw franchise. There might even be facts misrepresented for comedic effect, or entire plot lines left out. Again, either for comedic effect or in the interest of time.
In the interest of time, that reminds me of a light novel I read.
You will probably be very disappointed. However, if you stick around to watch anyway, and can manage to do so without inoffensive or even weirdly hostile comments defending these multi-million-dollar Hollywood productions, you will win the game. The choice is yours.
You heard the guy. He said it, not me. All jokes aside though, everything presented in this video is going to be my opinions, and you're totally allowed to not agree with me. Just, try to be cool. We're not going to have to be enemies. They're just movies. So with all that said, if you like
About to be night again.
The sound of my voice for some reason, lights running out of battery, or guys filming in rooms without air conditioner so that they sweat all the time, then come along with me as I explain exactly how this is going to work. I'm gonna watch through every single Saw movie, I'm gonna rate every single trap that appears in them, and then I'm gonna place those traps on this tier list. But how am I gonna determine what trap goes into what tier, you may ask, and I'm glad you did. For this video, I have developed the patent-pending Saw system where each and every trap gets rated on 3 different factors from 0 to 10. Those 3 factors being 1. Satisfaction. How narratively satisfying is it that this specific character ends up in this specific trap? This is not about whether or not I find it personally satisfying or if the trap is deserved or not, but rather whether or not the trap thematically fits for this specific victim. Pyromaniac has to crawl through fire. Very satisfying. 10 out of 10. A guy who killed a dog for sport is forced to drink a glass of bleach. No real connection, not very satisfying. 2. Avoidability. I want my trap to feel fair, and I want the characters to have a chance to get out of it. Otherwise, what's the point? Hence, the easier it is to get out, the higher the avoidability score. Of course, if the trap is just like an
Remember me.
10 out of 10. I'm trying to
Remember me for centuries.
In general, if the character can make it out alive either by pushing the thing or pushing it, and it feels unfair and they die no matter what they do, bad. And finally, number 3, wickedness. And this is simply how gruesome, terrible, and cringe-inducing the trap is. But remember that all traps suck, so if a trap gets a wickedness score of 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that it looks like a good time. It just means that, like, if I had to pick a trap, it'd probably be that one. So based on the points that a trap gets in these 3 categories, they will be assigned a tier. So let's say that a trap gets 10 on each of them, that's 30 points, putting it in the A tier. And the only tier outside of this system is the S tier. The S tier will be used by me whenever there's a trap I feel like especially fond of, or if I just want to put it up there. Doesn't matter what score it gets. If I feel that it's an S tier trap, it goes in the S tier. And just like with the Final Destination video, since we're watching these movies anyway, we might as well try and figure out along the way if they're any good. And that's it. That's how this will work. Last couple of things I need to say before we get started is that 1, since this is YouTube, I'm going to be cutting around the worst of the gore. I'm going to be pixelating shots every now and then, and that's just how it's going to have to be. So the most intense stuff won't really be shown. But that being said, hey, this is your content warning for this video. It's going to be impossible for me to list every bad thing that happens in this franchise. It has a little bit of everything when it comes to, you know, spooky, gory horror movie stuff. So this is your warning. If you're the kind of person
I need
that
more
might not
seeds,
do that very
gosh,
well,
diddly
then this is
darn.
the video for you. That's totally fine. Please put your mental health first, and you know, take care of yourself. I think that's more important than you watching a YouTube video. So make a judgment call, and you know, either thanks for watching this far. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one, or if you decide to stick around, let's begin.
Alrighty.
That's my premiere project for the Saw video.
Hello, Jeff. I want to play a game. You take great pride in the editing of your videos, spending weeks and weeks on each and every one of them. But I know you're sad. I know that you use this video source for storylines. Tell them unlimited diverse and high-quality media, such as music and sound effects and video backgrounds, as the number workflow plans all of your videos. What that is today. If you want to make it out of here live, you must edit the entirety of this video without any of thousands of high-quality assets that will express single predictable subscription costs.
That's impossible. I mean, if I have to grab a piece of music or stock footage from some other website, I can even legally cover.
We're tied. Voice is yours.
Alright. I'm tilling the earth.
The stuff he asks aren't even the best part, it's the templates. The templates. The best part of Storybox for an editor, like, you know, the thousands of pre-made professional looking video templates that I can use as a starting point and then customize to fit my own video.
I didn't know they cut that too, but such concepts, right?
No, there are no hidden fees with Storybox ever. It's all included in your monthly or annual plan.
I don't use Premiere Pro. I only use After Effects Apple Motion Edit Features.
No, they have professional looking templates for all those too, yeah. I mean, you can install all this for a single set price by heading over to storybox.com/Jeff or click the link down in the description, so. Huh. Guess you'll have to go subscribe to Storybox. Makes sense. So let's begin. Starting off, this guy, Adam, wakes up in a bathtub. He slithers out but finds that he's chained to a pipe. He starts shouting, but quickly learns that he is not alone, for in this room with him is an adult-sized toddler by the name of Lawrence. The two of them manage to turn on the lights. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're going to hear a faint little Wilhelm scream as the lights turn on.
Oh,
Therein
Lord.
is this sort of old, grimy, very big bathroom, and on the floor in the middle of the room lays the body of a man who has seemingly disconnected from the call using a bullet. From a gun, they start looking through their inventory, Adam finding a tape, and Lawrence finding a tape, a key, and a bullet. For a gun, they both pry out the key to see if they can get out of their tackles, and Lawrence overhead throws it across the room for no reason, but to no avail. The dead body has a tape recorder that they then manage to grab, and they play their respective tapes. Adam's tape essentially says,
Hey, I might be like a little fucked up game from my twisted mind. You're probably gonna die.
which is, you know, never fun to hear. But after again overhead throwing it across the room, we learn that Lawrence's tape has a bit more information. The voice in the recorder tells Lawrence that he has to kill Adam within a certain amount of time, or else his wife and daughter will be killed. The voice in the tape then throws in a couple of ARG-style clues like
X marks the spot,
and
follow your heart.
But what does it mean? Well, they notice a toilet with a heart on it, so Adam goes poop diving and soon comes back with a package containing 2 saws. Hey, now these ankle shackles and these saws essentially make up a perfect trap. But it is in some ways a bit different than most of the traps we'll see going forward, because basically what it boils down to is that, as far as I see it, this whole room, this whole experience that these guys will have over the next couple hours together is what makes up this trap. And the chains and saws are just like one aspect of it. And in the words of any 2016 YouTuber trying to move away from pranks, this is more of a social experiment. These hacksaws are there as an option, but not as a direct necessity from the moment they were introduced, at least so it seems. Therefore, it's kind of hard to rank this trap in the same way that I would rank the rest of the traps, but bear with me here. It's going to get more straightforward after this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this trap 0. Here it is, and I'm going to place it. I hope you can see that properly in S tier. Because, you know, it's iconic and it's what started off the franchise, you know, that's how I'm going to do that. Jesus Christ, it's very warm here. I'm going to see this. Now, the saws are not strong enough to cut through their chains, and while they think long and hard about what else they could possibly cut off with them, Lawrence lets us know that he has an idea who might have put them here. To reflect back, we learned that Lawrence was once a suspect in a murder case where someone was seemingly trying to frame him for a series of murders by someone that the press calls Jigsaw. We then get to see a couple examples of Jigsaw's work. The first one is a naked dude named Paul, who has been put into our first real trap of the day. A big cage full of razor wire that Paul has to try and make his way out of. So let's do this.
Alrighty.
Number 1. I know these are really small probably impossible for you to see, but I'm gonna have to fit a lot of them on there. We're just gonna have to live with it. In terms of narrative satisfaction, i.e. how fitting and thematic this trap is, it's, I don't know. We learned that Paul has engaged in self-harm before, and Jigsaw's essentially like,
So do you want to die, or do you just want attention? Well, if you want to die, you can just stay where you are and not move. But ironically, if you want to live, you have to go through razor blades.
which is like, I guess, on theme. Obviously, like, I'm not saying that this is reasonable, but by the way, you can just assume that I don't think any of the traps are reasonable, or that I would personally, find it satisfying to see a person go through this. It's rarely, if ever, a justified punishment for the supposed crime committed, but thematically within the narrative, trap number 1 is, I guess, fine. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. For avoidability, it's pretty clear cut. Like I said, if Paul wants to live, he has to die. Because we see that Paul does try to get out, and the razor wires end up killing him, which to me makes this kind of a shit trap, at least in terms of avoidability, so that's a 0. And for wickedness, they do mention finding stomach acid on the floor, which is, fucked up, but also, to be honest, I hadn't really heard of razor wire before. Like, obviously, I've heard of barbed wire, but not razor wire. That's such a fucked up invention, but I'm probably gonna give it 6 out of 10, if nothing else than just for that, which gives us a final score
there
of
we
12,
go.
placing
Alrighty.
the razor page in the D tier. So, Paul
The
tried to
D
get out by
tier.
doing so, and we are then introduced to the cops in charge of the investigation into this, namely Donald Glover and my boy Miles from Lost. We're then presented with trap number 2, where a naked dude is covered in flammable liquid. Apparently, he's been injected with a slow-acting poison, and the antidote is in a safe. The combination of the safe is written on the walls, but the twist is, of course, that the lights turn off, and he must use the candle to illuminate the writings on the wall without setting himself on fire. Oh, and the floor is also covered in broken glass. Yeah, needless to say, he burns.
This trap, why? That was just so impossible.
How come I have so many photos of you being up and about?
And honestly, that's just some cop shit I just can't get behind. And paired with the fact that close connection to fire that Jigsaw could come up with is that he mentioned,
Just like the people you have burned with your fake illness.
so yeah, I'll give it a 2. For avoidability, I was thinking like 7, because if he can push through the pane of the glass and be careful enough, he could theoretically get out of there. But the walls are also like covered in numbers, and I don't quite understand what we need to do. Like, is it just testing random numbers until he finds the right ones by chance? Because if so, that feels a little lazy and a little bit unfair. So I'm gonna pull it down from a 7 to a 6. The wickedness is pretty good. I like the idea of how careful you would have to be while moving, so that the candle flame doesn't like kind of lean into your hand at any point. I'll give it a 7. Putting trap number 3 in C tier. Now,
8 more seeds.
I might have to do some upscaling. I feel like we're off now, right? Now we've gotten started. We've only got like 60 more traps to go. Now, at the crime scene, the cops found a pen belonging to Lawrence, making him a suspect. Lawrence is a surgeon and in the middle of talking to his med students about a patient named John, when suddenly the artist formerly known as Henry Gale, aka Benjamin Linus from Lost.
I'll meet you outside. Goodbye, babe.
There's 2 Lost guys in this one. That won't happen again, but you'll have to see it. As Lawrence is talking about the previously mentioned patient, he only refers to him as the patient, but Ben interrupts and says that the patient's name is actually John. John Locke. He doesn't actually say that. That's another Lost character. He does say John, because the patient's name is John, but not Locke. That part. I made that for as like a goofy joke. Anyway, Lawrence is taken in by the police, but soon freed from any suspicion. But before they free him, just to be sure, they bring in a surviving victim of Jigsaw, Amanda. Remember her for later. Now, through a flashback, we learned
Oh, Amanda.
also known as the reverse burger. For some reason in my script, I've written the reverse jaw trap. Why did I write that? That can't be correct. Amanda wakes up strapped to a chair in a dark room with
Alrighty, we did it.
This device is a sort of spring-loaded hunk of metal that will fling itself open when the timer reaches 0. Therefore,
Really shouldn't have wasted iron on those 2 hoes.
The other way. The key to remove this device is hidden inside of the stomach of some guy on the floor. This man isn't dead, but just sort of paralyzed by some sort of poison. So Amanda gets to work, cuts the guy open, gets the key out, and frees herself at the last second. Save your teeth with this one trick. Dentist hater. Now, I hate to say it, but the narrative satisfaction is pretty low here. Again, there's something about her having like self-destructive / self-harm tendencies. Nothing that really connects it to the specific.
Alrighty.
So I'll give it a 3. But on the other hand, seeing
Guess we'll just go start digging the hole.
score of 10. And for wickedness, it do be kind of fucked up, so I'll give it an 8. Landing trap number 3 in the B tier. Like B movie, starring Jerry Seinfeld. Then there's some more drama in the bathroom, and we learn that the killer is watching them. There's a scene that takes place in Lawrence's apartment where we see his daughter's room, and I love the undeniable reliability of
He put his bed up here.
when depicting the kids, because not only do I feel like I see this all the time in movies and TV shows, but it's also so fucking accurate. I swear that like 9 out of 10 of my friends in the late 90s, early 2000s-ish had one of these guys somewhere in their house. I tried looking around for any sort of database of these bad boys being featured in various media, but I couldn't find anything. So this is my plea to you, the internet.
We
If there's any out there where a guy is keeping track of every single scene, in anime, and there are over 4,000 every time Jung Yul has made an appearance in a movie or TV show. Someone get on that, please. Thank you.
Alrighty, let's get to it.
So after filming this, I went to an IKEA to pick myself up a little Jung like you do. And I'm sorry, did I miss something? Where the fuck is the Jung Since when do they not have Jung at IKEA? Maybe you think, oh, but that's the Jung right there. No, that's a turtle. What, is Jung not cool anymore? We gotta have the fucking Blue High now? Okay, well, if Blue High is so cool, explain this handrail. Because this hasn't changed into like a long shark. That wouldn't even look good. It wouldn't even look good if it was a long shark. That would look super dumb. Is this all that's left of Jung? Oh my god. Fucking Gen Z, Blue High piece of shit. Blue High, man, you're too good for this. God damn it. We see that Lawrence's family is being held hostage, but we see that whoever is holding them hostage is being watched by Danny Glover. Now, Danny Glover has seemingly gone a little cuckoo, but why? Well, through a flashback, we learned that while he and Miles were investigating the case, they figured out where the killer's secret hideout was, so they head on over there. They get there and they find a little clown there, and no, I don't mean Ben Shapiro, but they also find a guy strapped to a machine with 2 drill skins. And this, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, is our first bonus trap. Bonus traps are traps that I deem to not be part of like the mainline series of traps.
Bonus trap.
Fits as a main trap, or doesn't meet criteria, or that I simply don't feel like putting it as a main trap. If you disagree with me on how I choose to count the traps, there's a whole comment section down there that I won't be reading. You have fun with that. Bonus traps will go right into a tier without me scoring it or giving it too much thought, mostly to save time. This video is going to be long enough as it is, and this one will go in the fucking B tier. Yeah. Okay, so then Mr. Killer comes out and starts the drills. Our boys in blue try to save the guy in the chair while also trying to arrest Mr. Killer at the same time, but he pulls out his Assassin's Creed blade and he slits Danny Glover's throat and runs away. Miles chases after him, but walks into bonus trap number 2. A bunch of shotguns hooked up in a row to fishing wire, which then proceed to do the thing that shotguns were designed to do. Rest in peace, Miles. Bonus trap 2 goes into C tier. I like the cartoony ones. Back in the bathroom, they find a secret box with cigarettes and phone inside. There's no doubt using the blood on the floor to poison Adam, but instead of doing this, Lawrence clues Adam in on his plan, and together they pull off the old fake being poisoned prank. But it doesn't work. We then get to see how both Lawrence and Adam was first kidnapped. Lawrence was walking through a parking garage when he suddenly notices a camera flash, but before he can locate the source of it, he's attacked by Pigman. Adam, on the other hand, is a photographer. Isn't that quite a coincidence? As he's developing photos, he hears something in his apartment. He goes to investigate and finds a little clown. And no, I don't mean Danny DeVito. The clown then plays Jigsaw last dot and he's weak, after which he also gets attacked by Pigman. Anyway, we learned that the spooky killer man was actually Ben Linus. Also, at some point we learned that Killer has an inoperable tumor, hence he's dying from cancer. Honestly, a pretty significant plot point, but I don't remember exactly how / when this was established, but just go along with it. Danny Glover now breaks into the apartment where Lawrence's family is being held hostage, and he attacks Ben Linus. But Ben breaks free and leaves to go kill Lawrence because the time has run out and he still hasn't killed Adam, hence he failed his test. In the room though, Lawrence has now decided to cut off his foot, so he does, and then crawls to the gun that's in the hand of the dead guy in the middle of the room, and he loads it with one bullet that he received earlier, and then he shoots Adam. Adam dies, and at the same time, Ben Linus kills Danny Glover and then enters the room. He says that it's too late for Lawrence because the time ran out, but surprise, Alex isn't actually dead, and he attacks Ben Linus, killing him with a toilet. Lawrence then says that he will get them help, and he crawls out of the room. Adam then finds a tape recorder in Ben Linus' pocket, and plot twist, Ben Linus was forced to do all this. He's not the real killer. And honestly, I don't really know how to count that as a trap, so I'll just do this and I'll call everything that Ben Linus went through, it's all bonus trap number 3, and I'll throw it into C tier again.
That's definitely a D tier.
I didn't love Ben Linus so much in Lost. I mean, he's fine here too, but mostly in Lost. But plot twist. Once again, the dead guy in the middle of the room now gets up, and it's not at all as dead as we've been led to believe. He says that Adam can unlock his chains with a key, but we saw that key go down the drain in the first shot of the movie. And for some reason in my notes, I counted this as trap number 4, even though it's technically part of trap number 0. But if I don't include this one, then all of my notes after this are going to be incorrectly numbered. So I'm calling this trap number 4, and I'm just going to throw it into the C tier. Sue me. Also, I guess I have to actually put it on there. A lot of entries in the C tier. It's so nice to get to make up your own rules. I have this whole elaborate system, but I'll just say fuck it whenever I feel like it. Mr. Killer or Jigsaw then walks over to the door, grabs the door handle, and says his famous catchphrase, Major L, and then closes it. The end. And that's it. Welcome to the first segue segment. These will go between each movie and will be made up of my personal thoughts, maybe some trivia or whatever I deem interesting, in an attempt to kind of tie together the movie we just watched as well as set up the next one. Depending on if you've seen it before and if you've seen any of the other Saw movies, you may or may not have picked up on this yourself, but somewhat ironically, the first Saw movie isn't really the type of movie that I think most people picture when they hear Saw. At least for me growing up, I thought of the Saw movies as this semi-torture porn franchise with a vague overarching plot where we learn a little more about Jigsaw and his motivations throughout the series. I would also think that most aspects of the production would feel pretty rushed, and that's likely due to the fact that they were pumping out one of these every single year, but also because that the point was never to really spin a compelling narrative with a lot of character depth or complex storylines, but rather just find like a narrative excuse to feature a handful of gruesome and violent scenes, each movie trying its hardest to top the last one, making each entry increasingly challenging to sit through without physically cringing at least once. But as you can probably tell, most of this doesn't really ring true for the first one. Like, obviously the last part about them outdoing their predecessors is a moot point for the first one, but I mean the other stuff. This movie was shot on a very low budget with pretty much a no-name cast and crew, and the one thing that they spent the most time on was
I've already lost so much durability.
Most of the other installment, but we'll get there. Now, this doesn't mean that this first entry is a masterpiece by any measure, at least I don't think so. It suffers heavily in its visual aesthetic, and the editing is at times insufferable. The acting is mostly fine, but no real mind-blowing performances either. But regardless, I'm not really here to give an in-depth review of each movie, so I'll just leave it at this. The first Saw movie is a pretty different beast from the rest of the franchise. As a standalone movie, it's painfully 2004, but it's not a bad movie. But I think it does stick out somewhat from the rest, and I again think you'll see what I mean as we move forward. And speaking of moving forward, Saw 2 was greenlit just a couple of days after the premiere of Saw 1, and the short version of how it came together is that none of the original directors or writers were on board to write and direct the sequel, but some other guy had a script that he had been passing around trying to get made, and that had been accused of being very Saw-like. And that script ended up being converted into Saw 2 with the help of James Wan, who directed Saw 1. Like, he came in to just look over the script, doctor it a little bit, and make it fit into the Saw universe. So with that, let's get into it. Saw 2 immediately starts us off with trap number 5, and some of the most annoying editing I've ever seen. In Saw 1, you may have noticed these rather intense visual scenes where they essentially over and under cranked the cameras and pushed them around at subjects at various speeds, which has then been edited together in sort of like a music video-esque way. And while it was probably super cool in 2004 and was very likely a cheap way to add some visual flair to a low-budget movie, today I think it looks just cheap. But I am sort of able to look beyond it for the first one, but for some of the sequels, it's just downright painful to watch. Like, check this out. Isn't that fun? Anyway, trap 5 is sort of like a fly trap that will snap shut unless the victim unlocks it within a certain time frame, and the key is, unfortunately, hidden behind this guy's right eyeball. Bummer. The victim of this specific trap is a police informant, or as we call them around these parts, a snitch. Which is the motivation for him having to cut out his eye, because he spent his life watching others. And due to this, I will give it a satisfaction score of 6, because it's fine, and I guess it does have some sort of thematic connection, but I'm not sure if it's an airtight metaphor. Doesn't he just as much use his voice to tell the police about the crimes that he's witnessed, so he could have, cut out his tongue, or, I don't know, his legs to walk from the criminal activity to the police station? It's a 6. As for avoidability, I'll give it a 7. As obviously he can get out without killing himself, but to do it, I have to cut out his fucking eye, which, personally, and I have to assume for most people, is like an actual nightmare, which naturally leads me to wickedness, which I will give a solid 8 for,
alrighty, that's unfortunate.
Which, when counted up, puts
let's see how much experience it's gonna take to heal this thing.
We then get introduced to what is essentially the main character of Saw 2, Dad Cop, who is played by none other than Donnie Wahlberg, brother of Mark Wahlberg, founding member of 90s boy band New Kids on the Block, and also known from his role as the guy who turned Bruce Willard into a skeleton in The Sixth Sense. with a gun. Now, Dad Cop is a cop, but he's also a dad. How will he juggle the stressful life of being a police officer with a deranged serial killer on the loose while also being there for his troublemaker teenage son who keeps running into problems with the law when he himself works for the law? That's so bad. Well, we're about to find out
The
if Dad Cop shows up to
law.
the crime scene of
I am the law.
Are the words.
Look closer.
This is a Vipsy Pop
But Dad Cop
reference.
won't take the bait. He has a desk job these days, and his rowdy days as a patrolling officer are long gone. But that night, Dad Cop wakes up in a cold sweat with a realization. A logo that he saw on the trap points to a specific house in an industrial complex. So they go to raid it, and much to everyone's surprise, inside they find the man himself, Jigsaw, eating a bowl of cereal.
Jigsaw.
Ah, this man is sick, I tell you. Now, Jigsaw is hooked up to Dad's hospital equipment, and upon closer inspection, he finds a series of monitors showing the inside of a house with a number of people inside it, one of which is Dad Cop's son. Dad Cop politely asks Jigsaw where his son is, and Jigsaw responds that
He's in a safe place.
we then cut to the people from the video feed, and there's a whole bunch of them, but luckily, you don't really need to keep track of who everyone is, so let me just guide you through what happens.
Too expensive. What does that mean? What do you mean too expensive?
The people in the house are trying to figure out what is going on, but one of them seems immediately more panicked than the rest, and that person
Fucking
is
bastard.
Amanda, the girl from the first movie who was stuck in a reverse bear trap but managed to survive. But if she survived her first round with Jigsaw, why did he pull her back in again? Doesn't really seem fair, but we'll worry about that later.
Yes.
Now they find a tape recorder essentially telling them that
You're all breathing at
Piece
full
of
capacity.
shite.
Find the antidote within 3 hours, or you'll die. Also, there's a key, but don't use it.
this is of course followed by one of the characters going up to said door, putting his eye up to the keyhole, and the key being turned at the same time, activating bonus trap number 4. Gun. In my script, I have this in D tier, but the more I think about it, I'm gonna put this one in A tier, just because it's so Looney Tunes. Again, love the cartoon traps. I feel like some people are not gonna like that the reverse bear trap is in B tier. This gun on the door is in A tier. But if you haven't seen anything yet, there's a lot more where that came from. Back in the warehouse, Dad Cop asks Jigsaw what it is that he actually wants, and Jigsaw answers that he just wants a bit of Dad Cop's time. He wants Dad Cop to sit down and talk with him, and if he does that, then his son will be found safe and sound. Dad Cop reluctantly agrees and sits down to have a chat. Back in the house, they're trying to break out through a big door marked exit, but to no avail. At the same time, 2 of the victims realize that they've been to the same prison.
Silk touch, I'm breaking.
Furnace, a tape recorder,
I guess I'll get this. I'm breaking too. How unfortunate. I thought it would have some form of
So he calls
efficiency.
the furnace to retrieve 2 doses of antidote, but he gets shot inside and he burns alive. Rip in peace. Satisfaction 2, as the only real connection here is that this person has burned those around him with his lies. Which is also the second time now that Jigsaw has used the words burn as sort of like a clever pun to have an excuse to build a fire trap. Pretty lazy. Avoidability is hard. There is this shot that shows a dial with the text twist, so presumably he could turn the fire off, but to do that he would have to crawl head first into the fire, which he doesn't want to do. I'll give it a 6. And finally, for wickedness, I'll also give it a 6. Burning alive isn't, very lit. D tier. What do you think of the tier list, by the way? This house we love also credits. We then get a flashback scene of Jigsaw getting his hands on the most interesting detail here is learning his full name. Not the coolest serial killer name.
Kramer?
The name Kramer just makes me think of someone who's like, I don't know, into model trains or saying the N-word.
It makes me think of Seinfeld.
After receiving his diagnosis,
Yeah,
his life
the
back to
Laugh
his home, but
Factory.
he survives, and this is what motivated him to start his killing spree, as he found some sort of survival instinct within himself when being faced with his own mortality. So for all of you who care about a motive, here you go. Back in the house, people are starting to get exhausted, likely from the poison in their bodies. The son talks to Amanda, asking why she thinks that she's back for another round of Kramer's games. She says that it's because she used to be cruel to herself, abusing drugs and self-harming, but after her experience in the bear trap, she stopped. Until recently, when she fell back into old habits and she believes that this is why Kramer is punishing her. Again, the son asks how long she's been using drugs, to which she responds.
I started in jail.
He then asks what she got arrested for, to which she replies. But that doesn't make any sense. Weird. The gang then enters
With
the room,
apologies
which they find
to-
addressed to Mr. Muscle, who's been acting generally violent and antagonistic.
His name.
We find out that he's a drug dealer, and for his punishment, he must fall into the same pit of misery and despair that he puts his customers into. And we are then revealed to a huge hole in the ground filled with used needles.
Janet
Someone
Jackson,
inserts a key
I
to the
think?
door, behind which there is antidote for him, but he must do it before the timer runs out, for when he does, the door locks. Now, Mr. Muscle doesn't really like this idea, and he reckons that he'd rather not dig through these used needles, so instead he grabs Amanda and throws her into the pit to dig through for him.
God, just think about it, how dirty that is.
After the initial shock, she starts digging. I'll spare you most of this scene, but eventually she does find the key, but this absolute fucking moron drops the key as he gets to the door, and the timer runs out just as he's about to unlock it. So, trap 7, the needle pit, is a really good trap, and I suspect that it will land pretty high up, but let's see. For satisfaction, I think that the metaphor here really holds up well, with him having to dig through what is essentially the dirty remnants of how he makes his living, even if it ends up, being Amanda that does it, but we're rating the trap here, not the circumstances through which it actually ended up playing out. I'll give it a 9. For avoidability, it's pretty much a solid 10. I mean, it's 100% doable, and bearing any diseases from the needles, it's not super likely that you end up dead from this. And finally, for wickedness, I'll give it a solid 8. The sound design really does a lot of heavy lifting here. We can hear Amanda's fingernails as they dig through broken glass and metal needles, and without showing anything too graphic, it's very easy to imagine the feeling of what she's being forced to do. So 9. Thus, the needle pit is our first A tier. I mean, the fucking gun is already in there, but that was a bonus trap. The first actual trap to end up in A tier. I might move this up to S tier, but for now, I'll leave it in A tier, and I'll decide later. Back in the warehouse, Cop Dad tries a new strategy and starts ripping up various pages of Kramer's work in front of him, but it's not very effective. As a tracking team enters the building to hopefully be able to triangulate where the broadcast is coming from, the cops also find a binder with information of each person in the house, and as it turns out, not only has all of them but one been to prison, all of them but one were arrested by Dad Cop, and all of them but one were falsely sentenced or had drugs planted on them by Dad Cop. Hence, all of them have very good reason to hate Dad Cop. That is all of them but one. Remember when Amanda said her drug problem started in prison, but that she got arrested for possession? pretty smart, pretty cool. I like that. It's good writing. There's a storyline that I'm kind of skipping over where the people in the house all have numbers written on the back of their heads, and Mr. Muscle starts figuring this out, but don't worry about it. Amanda realizes who the kid's dad is, and that if the others were to find this out, they might want to kill him. So they try to move away from the remaining others. At the same time, Mr. Muscle is stumbling around with a knife trying to read the numbers in the back of everyone's head, and he begins chasing the two of them. That cop sees this happening on monitors, and he has had enough. He beats the absolute shit out of Kramer, giving into his old ways of being a dirty cop. And after a while, Kramer caves and says that he will take that cop to the house, but no one else can come. So they get in a car and leave, because yeah, that doesn't sound suspicious at all. Only you and I can go. And he's like, yeah, sure, that's a fucking idiot. At the same time, this girl finds herself in front of trap number 8, the McDonald's cup, which is like not an official name that the fandom uses or anything. I made it up. You'll see why in a second. That goes for most of the names, by the way. When I was taking my notes, I just made up names as I went along. So trap number 8 is a glass box with 2 holes for your arms and a syringe full of antidote on the inside. The girl is like, yeah, this makes sense. Nothing about this seems, way too easy. In fact, I'm not even noticing the huge fucking razor blades through this see-through glass box. So she sticks her arm inside. Now, the way this box is designed, and this is also me explaining the name that I gave it, is sort of like a McDonald's soda cup. Because the hole that the straw goes into, essentially it's like 2 slits forming a cross, and then there's these, triangular pieces. Have you ever tried sticking your finger? That is certainly a metaphor. If you like me have done this time and time again throughout your life, you know just how easily your finger goes into there, but when you try to pull it back out, these little bitches dig into your skin really bad. And this trap follows the exact same principle. Arm easily goes in, but less easily comes back out. The girl finds this out the hard way by not only sticking one of her hands in there, but knocking over the syringe and immediately shoving her other hand in the other hole. And, well, what do you think? What's gonna happen here? You fucked up. This is on you. I mean, it's not. She's been kidnapped, and this is torture house, but it's kind of on you. For satisfaction, there really isn't anything at all, so that's a 0. The avoidability has to be 10. I mean, she could just have used her free hand to push the blades, let her hand free, and the wickedness is not that high either, so I'll give it a 3. Put that image sideways. And that's the last movie of the movie, so let's see how it ends. On the way to the house, there's a funny shot of Dad Cop hitting Kramer on the arm like you hit your buddy on the school bus after they called your mom hot, followed by a cute little reference when Dad Cop asks for directions and Kramer says that it's the... At the same time, the cops manage to triangulate where the house is, so they start going there too. That cop exits the car, leaving Kramer in the passenger seat and enters the house. Once inside, he finds all the bodies, but he can't find his son. We find out that that's because Amanda and son have moved down to the basement where they're still being chased by Mr. Muscle. Now the SWAT team also race into the house, but for some reason, the cops back in the warehouse can't see the SWAT team on their monitors. Amanda and son opens the door and finds themselves in the room from Saw 1. Mr. Muscle comes in, cuts off the number on the back of his own neck before going for the kill, but the son manages to slit his throat and he dies. The SWAT team then finds a series of VCRs in the house. It's broadcasting a recording. It's not live. Also, they're in the wrong house. Dad Cop now enters the Saw 1 room, but he can't see Amanda or his son. He does, however, find Miss Pig, who stabs him with a syringe.
I'm Pigman.
Back in the warehouse, the timer finally hits 0, and as it does, a safe opens up right behind where Jigsaw was sitting, and inside it is the boy. If only Dad Cop would have listened to Kramer saying that his boy was in a safe place, and that's all he had to do. He had to sit there and talk to him until the timer ran out. And if he did that, he would have found his boy. Instead, he now wakes up on the floor and finds a tape recorder. He hits play, but the voice isn't Kramer. It's Amanda. She explains that she is essentially Kramer's apprentice now, and she helped him throughout this whole process. Plot twist, I guess. Dad Cop is chained to the floor just like the victims in the first film, and Amanda walks past him, stops in the door, and repeats Kramer's famous phrase from the first film, "El risk." So here's a fun fact. Saw 2 is the highest grossing movie... Grossing? Highest grossing? It's the one that made the most money out of all Saw movies. And I don't know what your takeaway from that is, but to me, kind of makes sense, People like the first one, and then they thought that there was a sequel happening, so they went and saw that, and they thought, oh, well... And then that's that. They probably didn't go to see all of the other ones, but 1 or 2 here or there, and yeah, but that can't be said for us. We're in it for the long haul, baby. We're just getting started. Now, Saw 1 had a budget of $1 million US. Saw 2 had a budget of $4 million US, and Saw 3 had a budget of a whopping $10 million US. And like any good producer would know, this should mean that Saw 3 is pretty much exactly 10 times as good as Saw 1. So let's not delay this any further.
Yep.
I didn't grow taller. I'm now sitting on some sound insulating foam because my ass hurts. We start off where we last left off. Dad Cop in the bathroom from Saw 1. He considers sawing off his leg, but instead he decides to just crush it with a toilet lid. This is a pretty visceral scene, and it's the first clue to a pattern with all the Saw movies to an extent, but the first 3 movies in particular, at least in my opinion, and that's this thing that I mentioned earlier, attempting to outdo their predecessors by constantly upping the brutality and overall wickedness, both with the concepts of how the traps work, but also just through how it's shown, the visuals, the audio designs, etc. And again, this is a concept that in general fails to be very effective. As you'll see in some of the later installments of the franchise, some of the writers know that if you save the most gruesome trap that you have for the end of the movie, it'll be much more effective and be more of a lasting impact on the audience, while if you go balls to the walls from the first scene of the movie and attempt to keep that up, for an hour and a half, you essentially desensitize the audience, and when it gets to the end, you're not really that effective anymore, regardless of how brutal the thing you conjured up is. But back to the plot. Dad crushes his foot and gets it shattered tirelessly. We are now at the crime scene for one of Kramer's traps, and the character from the last movie is there, Cop Girl. I didn't really mention her, but she's here, she's back. Like always, don't worry about it. We then cut to a flashback of what happened here. Trap number 9 consists of several chains attached to this man's body, and a bomb that will go off if he doesn't succeed to free himself in time. Apparently this guy has been in and out of prison his entire life, so now we will see if he has what it takes to break free from both his metaphorical and literal chains, I guess. I don't know, I'm not fully...
Bro, that trap is impossible.
It would be well and good if it weren't for the chain that he has through his lower jaw. That one detail kind of ups the wickedness, which we'll get to, but it completely fucks up the avoidability, as it implies that he essentially has to rip his entire lower jaw off to escape,
exactly.
Which seems not very survivable. Remember the reverse bear trap? That was a whole trap that was just that. So I'm tempted to say 0, but I'll give it like a 1 for the off chance that I guess maybe it is technically possible to escape and to survive this. It's just not very likely. The wickedness of the chains through his skin here and there is, gross, but it's not the worst we've seen or will see. But again, the one through his jaw kind of boosts it up a bit. So
that's what that noise was then.
9 in the E tier. Sorry, buddy. Now, at the crime scene, we are introduced to this guy, Hoffman. He's one of the police officers now working on the Jigsaw case. He looks like this duck, and he'll be around for a while, so get used to him. I never did. We learned that to enter the crime scene, the police had to break down the door, which was welded shut. And that doesn't really fit Kramer's memo. If the victim had survived the trap, how would he have gotten out? Let's keep that in mind for now. Next up, we're in Cop Girl's apartment as she is watching one of Jigsaw's tapes when her TV suddenly switches channels, and she can see herself live. She goes looking for the source of the video, presumably a camera, and she finds one in her closet, and then she's attacked by Miss Piggy. Also, have I moved position? I feel like I'm blocking the blue screen here like entirely.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
That's my bad. I hope I haven't had to do a bunch of weird stuff to fit the footage next to me. My bad. Now we can watch any of my other long-form movie videos. You know that I usually try to avoid sounding like some sort of CinemaSins style critique channel, and I do understand that what we have here is an effective little spooky scene, but I still can't help but lean into that a little bit and wonder, how did they do this? And also, why did they do this? Like, did they break in and then place a camera in her closet and then run an RCA cable over to her TV, and then have like, an extra remote on them, hiding in the dark corner and switching the channels so she could see her? Like, why? Why would they do all that? Once she finds the camera, and Piggy just shows up and knocks her out. So it just seems convoluted, I guess. Maybe I'm missing something? I feel like I'm missing something. I probably am. Now, Girl Cop wakes up in trap 10. A device that is strapped to her chest that would reopen her ribcage if she doesn't unlock the device before the device is inside of a jar of acid. So let's run through it. Satisfaction, basically zero. Kramer says something about her working at a morgue or like with bodies and that she wants to join her true family in death. But I know that doesn't really motivate this specific trap in any way. Avoidability, pretty good. I'll give it a 9 because, you know, yeah, it'll hurt, but it's totally doable to get the key out without killing yourself unless you drop the key. But yeah, 9. And for wickedness, we definitely have more gruesome traps, but I feel like this has an aspect of like mind over matter that I really appreciate. So I'm going to land on a solid 7, putting trap number 10 in the C tier. A lot of C tier traps so far. Now after this, maybe a couple of soft fans out there thought that I missed this. I didn't. So Cop Girl does manage to get the key and unlock her device before the timer runs out, but even though she does, she isn't able to get out of it, and thus she is ripped apart, removing all of my points from avoidability, and therefore knocking trap number 10 down from C tier to E tier. How sad. We now cut to this couple, and I'll call them Dr. Girl and Dr. Boy. But please note that Dr. Boy isn't actually a doctor. I just call him that because he's dating Dr. Girl. The two of them are having a serious conversation, or rather avoiding having a serious conversation that is pretty clear that they should be having because their relationship isn't doing very well for some reason. But she has to leave because her shift at the hospital is about to start. Once her shift is over and she's getting ready to go home, she is attacked by Miss Piggy. After this, she wakes up tied to a chair in some dirty old warehouse, and with her is Amanda. Amanda rolls her into a room where Kramer lays in an old hospital bed. He explains that he is dying, and she is tasked with keeping him alive as long as possible. A sort of collar is placed around her neck, loaded with shotgun bullets. This collar is directly connected to Kramer's EKG machine, meaning that if he dies, so does she. Now, the shotgun collar is trap number 11, and as for narrative satisfaction, I can appreciate the simplicity of a doctor who dies if the patient dies. I'll give it an 8. The avoidability is tricky because on the one hand it could be doable, but on the other hand,
Red Dead Redemption 2. Pepe's got Red Dead Redemption 2. I remember him mentioning that to me earlier.
And that lands trap number 11 in the C tier. Surprise, surprise. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of C tier traps. We now cut to Jeff, and that is his real name in the movie, not me doing some sort of weird self-insert. That's
the name of Jeff.
I have a nickname for him. We learned that Jeff has a dead kid, and he's informed that through this process that he's about to go through, he will be able to enact revenge upon the person who killed his kid, if he so chooses. Back in the operating room with Kramer, we have a very funny interaction between Amanda and Dr. Girl. But then Kramer. Dr. Girl manages to calm it down, but it's clear that Kramer does not have much time left. Back to Jeff, who walks into a very blue room and finds this franchise's first and I think last breasts, female breasts. The breasts in question are attached to a woman who was the only witness to the accident that killed Jeff's son. However, she didn't talk to the police or testify in court, and now the girl gets sprayed with ice cold water. This room is also like freezing cold, if that wasn't clear from blue tones and everything. To save her, all Jeff has to do is reach between some very cold pipes and grab a key. This will hurt him a bit as he will have to press his face up against the pipes, but nothing even remotely life-threatening, as this trap is more focused on the psychological aspect for Jeff. And honestly, this is probably my favorite trap so far. Like out of all of them. I know it may seem a little basic, and it is a little hard to explain why, but I promise it's not because of the mommy milkers on screen. There's just something about the fact that it's pretty easy to relate to Jeff in this moment and how he's torn between doing what's right and letting her suffer because he has suffered for several years at this point since the loss of his child. It's a pretty unambiguous wrongdoing of this girl to not testify in court for what she saw, and while it of course would never be morally defendable for the person through this that she's going through, it's not hard to imagine that it might feel kind of fair for Jeff, at least in the moment. Hence, for narrative satisfaction, I'm gonna give this a 9, mostly for what Jeff is going through rather than what she is.
No, Jeff. Jeff, man. Jeff in this movie, he pisses me off so much. He's always so slow. Slow ass motherfucking Jeff.
Gore level, it's undeniably very cruel, and it's not hard for me to imagine the torment that she must be going through. So I'll give it a 7. This lands us in the A tier. But I think I'll use my veto for the first time and just put it in S tier. Congratulations, Ice Room. Good job. Also weird, I don't know if you can see that. The two tracks right now,
motherfucking Jeff.
The green and yellow. I don't know if that means anything. Anyway, Jeff ends up grabbing the key, but it's too late. Rip in peace, lady. And I'll be now skipping a bunch of story as it isn't really relevant, but Dr. Girl plans to attack Amanda, but ends up not doing it. There's some dialogue between Amanda and Kramer. We get a Toy Story 2 style scene of Kramer building his little puppet guy, and then Jeff finds a crashed puppet. Hello, darkness, which then leads him to stumble into trap number 13. Pig goop. In this trap, the judge who gave Jeff's son's killer a very light sentence is tied to the bottom of a big silo, and disgusting pig carcasses fall into a meat grinder, turning them into goopy goop, which slowly fills the silo, threatening to drown him. Jeff has to burn a bunch of his kid's stuff to get the key, and long story short, he ends up doing it and saving the guy in the last second. Now, the vibes of this trap are absolutely rancid, and it makes me unreasonably annoyed because it kind of feels like a middle school bully is trying to gross you out while you're having school lunch, and they're going like, "That disgusting rotting pig, it's got worms, and it's here now, and there's also poop and maggots everywhere." I hate it. Satisfaction 0, avoidability 7, wickedness 10. That's C tier, but I don't want it to be in C tier. I'm putting it in F tier because I hate it. Following this, they did surgery on a Kramer, and during which we get a flashback of Kramer and
Surgery on a Kramer.
the happy couple is hanging out in some park, and I see that the camera Kramer is filming with is a Sony DCLR.
The Laugh Factory?
That camera released in 2005. This movie came out in October 2006. So, are you trying to tell me that this scene is taking place only about a year ago, and that everything was good in Jigsaw's life that recently? I don't think so. Then get some more backstory to how Kramer managed to convince Amanda to become his apprentice. We learned that it was Amanda who kidnapped Adam back in Saw 1, and we get some additional details on the first movie. For example, that Kramer injected himself with some sort of drug to make his pulse slow down and keep his breathing to a minimum so that Lawrence and Adam wouldn't notice that he wasn't dead. Now, here's a fun little fact. The Saw 1 bathroom that they used here was actually made for Scary Movie 4, and the producers of Saw 3 reached out and asked them, hey, could we come and shoot a scene there? And they were like, yeah. So Scary Movie 4 and Saw 3 back to back for some reason. You'll probably note that it's the same room. This guy loves the trivia page on IMDb. Anna starts getting jealous of Dr. Girl for spending so much time with her dad, Kramer, and in the meantime, Jeff finds a magazine with a single bullet in it. I don't know which one's a magazine and which one's a clip. Where's most critical when you need them.
You absolute buffoon. These are mags. They're mags. This is also a mag. They're all mags.
Jeff and the judge head into a room that contains trap 14, which in my notes I just called twist and shock. In this trap is the person that hit Jeff's kid with a car and killed him. His legs, arms, and neck are being held in place between like two pins.
Oh, this one yet again. Oh, ass motherfucking Jeff.
There's also some Jesus imagery here, probably something about dying for our sins, but I don't know exactly what they were going for. The satisfaction with this one isn't very high. I'll give it a 3. The avoidability is pretty much the same as the ice trap, except that to get the key, Jeff has to try and get the key without being shot by a shotgun, so I'll give it an 8 for that. And the wickedness is probably one of the highest ones so far. I'll give it a solid 10. This scene is overall extremely visceral, and I probably won't be showing too much of it at all, because I don't think you two will like that, and also I don't want to put you through. But this scoring lands trap number 14 in the B tier. Congratulations, buddy. The rest of the scene plays out exactly like the other traps that Jeff has gone through. At first he's angry, and then he starts to question if he should really let this person die, and in the last second he decides to save them. But for the ice trap he was too late, for the pig goop he was just in time, and for this one he's too late again. And the man's head gets rotated 180 degrees. Rest in peace. And there we overexposed. Somehow I forget to mention that the judge also dies in this scene. The shotgun where the key is gets triggered and he gets shot and he dies. Now back to me. Now we're getting into the end of this one, and things really go nuts here, so I try to keep up as I speedrun us through it. Amanda comes into the room and she pulls a gun on Dr. Girl. Kramer advises her to not shoot Dr. Girl. We learn that Amanda breaks Kramer's rules sometimes, meaning that she is the reason that some of the victims couldn't escape from the traps even if they beat them. Jeff finds a gun and puts his one bullet in it. He opens the door that leads him into the operating room. Amanda decides to not listen to Kramer's advice and she shoots Dr. Girl. As she does, Jeff comes into the room and catches Dr. Girl, and plot twist, Dr. Girl is Jeff's wife. The Dr. Man we saw in the beginning was someone that Dr. Girl was having an affair with. Hence why she was chosen by Kramer to be the one to come here and be forced to help him with the shotgun collar and keeping him alive. Jeff is understandably pissed and he shoots Amanda in retaliation. Hence Amanda loses her game that Kramer has set up to test her. And I don't know if that should be counted as a bonus trap or a regular trap or what, so I'm simply not gonna count it. Sue me. Kramer then says that if Jeff moves his wife out of there, she will die, but that Kramer can have an ambulance here in 4 minutes. All Jeff has to do is pass one final test. He must forgive Kramer. Now Jeff thinks long and hard about this and then says, I forgive you, and proceeds to cut Kramer's throat, which kills him and in turn triggers Dr. Girl's shotgun collar, killing her too. A take place letting Jeff know that Kramer has kidnapped Jeff's daughter and put her somewhere that only he knows where it is. So now everyone is dead except for Jeff and his daughter, who is somewhere. The end. So Saw 3 is kind of a lot. Like, I'm not a very sensitive guy when it comes to stuff like this, and it's not like I walked away from this movie feeling like it went too far or anything, but out of all of them, this one feels the most unnecessarily vulgar, if that makes sense. Part of that is definitely the heightened level of gross out stuff, but another thing that kind of irked me, I guess, is the fact that the lady in the ice room is naked. Now, obviously, just having a pair of naked breasts in a scene doesn't make it inherently sexual in any way, but the way that it's shot and the way that the whole movie otherwise kind of seems to lack, I don't know, basic taste, the choice to have her be naked and the choice to make sure that her boobs are in every shot of her before she then just eventually dies, it feels unnecessary to me. Or like it feels different from the other movies in a way that I can't quite put into words. I guess it's more exploitative, maybe is the word I'm looking for. I don't know. I don't really necessarily have a problem with it per se, but it did raise my eyebrow and I thought it was worth mentioning. Saw 3 overall kind of annoying.
Necrophilia question mark?
But let's just say that we haven't seen anything yet, because we're now about to get into Saw 4. For this one, I don't really have to preface it much because once I'm back at my desk, I can elaborate quite a bit on it and my feelings about it. So instead, I'll take this quick opportunity to mention that for one scene in this movie specifically, I had to do some pretty strong color correction and add a lot of blur, because if I don't, YouTube's automatic system flags it, even though this definitely falls under transformative content, but it's YouTube, it doesn't really. Whatever, you get it. So when you get to a scene in this one with a lot of blue skin and blurry visuals, just know that the movie doesn't actually look like that. That's me. Or, yeah, I mean, it's me. That's YouTube's fault. There's some new printouts on the table. I have a new cup of tea, and I moved this camera a little bit so that hopefully you can see this a little clearer. And I even put on the happiest of the ties, because we have arrived at Saw 4, and I don't know how to say this in any other way, so I'm just gonna put it out here as plainly as I can. Saw 4 is one of the worst movie experiences I've ever had. If I'm gonna try to be charitable, I'd say that maybe it just isn't the type of movie for me, or that it's a movie that really tried to reach beyond what it was capable of pulling off, or something along those lines. But honestly, I just simply did not enjoy almost any aspects of this movie, and out of all of the Saw movies, this is the one that I've been dreading to talk about.
Alrighty, everyone. I think that this is going to be the end of the stream. I'm ending stream here. Thank you, anybody who's watching, who watched, who's doing the watching, and has done the watching. Anyway, thank you to all the watchers. Alrighty, anyway, I'm ending stream. Goodbye.